right, so hopefully you guys ate enough. I kind of seem to be losing my voice because I've been talking a lot, but if you can't hear anything or if you don't understand whatever I'm saying, just yell out my name. My name is Dhruv Patel. You can also follow me on Twitter. My screen name or handle is Sylph-Design, SYLPH Design. Easier. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today, principles of UI animation with CSS3. So what I'm going to do is, I didn't have enough time to create animations myself, so I collected really cool examples for you guys to check them out. Before we jump into it, let's talk about who I am, what I do, and why am I here. So, let me see this. There. So I'm a founder of Convert. We recently just got purchased by another company. I can't name the name of the company until they publicize it. But for that, I had to move to Florida. So I literally flew down over here just for the talk. Idea behind Convert is to create some really beautiful landing pages without knowing tech. One of the biggest problems that we encountered was people that did not know tech wanted to create web pages. They would use website builders and WordPress, which is the worst platform to build websites or landing pages on. So we wanted to do something about it, and we created a solution that really truly helps non-technical people, marketers, small business owners to create some really beautiful marketing campaigns without touching a piece of code, because we handle the coding side of things. I also had a consulting company called We Are Amazing. That is where I mainly did conversion optimization, user experience, UI, and slowly moved into front end. My background starts as a designer. I moved from design to being a UX person to being a front-end person. So most of the back-end stuff I still don't understand, but you know, I have good people around me that help me with what I need to learn, especially guys like Joe, a few other people over here. I just can't remember the name right now. But so idea behind what we are going to talk about today is, oops, wrong stuff. Okay, yeah. So one of the biggest thing is I always like to start with having a more emotional appeal to anything that I do in terms of creating an experience. Our human brain is designed in a way that although we think logically from our frontal cortex, most of our emotional appeal, like the reason why we do a lot of things, comes from the, I forgot, limbic system. So the more you attract, my whole idea is the more you attract the limbic system when you make a marketing appeal, the better impact you have on people. Experiences like a lot of people love Mac. Why is that? It's because it's not only simple, but it attaches with you emotionally. It's not like a, you know, a Windows computer, although I use Windows in the past, and it's pretty cool. I understand it, but not many non-technical people understand it. So idea is emotions over logic is the whole idea. Most developers can develop any application. You give it to them and they can develop anything, but not many people can create that experience. And that's the whole idea, is for most of the developers that are over here, help them understand what animation or what kind of emotional appeal they can bring to a basic button. When you bring your mouse over, you can clearly change the color of the button or what have you when you bring your mouse over, but if you bring a little bit ease into it or a little bit transition into the button changing of colors, it really brings the emotional appeal to the end user. So that's the topic that I want to discuss, and that's very near and dear to me. So what we are going to discuss today, we are going to talk more about theory, what the principles of animation are. We'll go into detail about designing in motion, so when to use animation, when not to use animation. Sometimes it becomes very frustrating when things are animating in front of you and you don't want it. So when to use it, when not to use it, and then from there we'll move into some CSS. What properties of CSS allows you to do animation? It's really simple. It's once you start using it, the more you use it, the more you train your brain over using animation, you will enjoy it. Idea is not to just overuse it altogether. So we'll talk about the CSS Transitions, Transforms, and CSS Animations. From there we can, along the way we'll look at demos, we'll take a look at all the tools, resources, and books that I use personally, and if you're not aware of them, you can probably take a look at those and get some inspirations out of them. So from there we'll move to the next one. So principles of animation. So according to this book called The Illusion of Life by Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston, I think that's the name of the person, but they were one of the first animators at Disney, and they created these 12 principles of design. Animation meaning what emotions attach to humans when they look at something, and you see that in Disney all the way through now, anytime you watch any of the Disney movies. So these are the 12 principles that we'll go over. Number one would be squash and stretch. So pretty much it adds weight to the and volume to an otherwise very static interface. Now when you look at something like this, especially that GIF animation I have, you'd ask yourself, how do I add this into my CSS without making it look not ugly or without ruining a user's experience while visiting it? So here's a great example where you're adding some weight, and this is all done in CSS. So for each example that I have presented, I have a link to that particular person's code pen, so you can clearly see how this particular animation was created. So you can create emotional appeal to a lot of your design. Can you see that? Oh, I was just loading it on my side, sorry. Give me just a second. All right, so there. So yeah, just by creating these simple clicks, it just attaches you emotionally, like you want to turn this on and off button no matter what you're using. It just makes you just want to touch it, right? So creating those emotional appeals. So that's that example. The next one is anticipation. So pretty much, preparing a user for something that's about to happen. So getting them ready. So MailChimp does this really well, or used to do it. I haven't used MailChimp in a while, so there might be a different example that you guys, Snapchat maybe, that little bouncing rubbery thing, their ghost that jumps up and down when you refresh it. So that's anticipation. It like kind of makes you want to do it. What you can do with CSS3 with the very basic simple interaction is, when you bring your mouse over something, it moves a little bit, so it anticipates a user to do something towards it. The user knows that they want to click on it, they want to take action towards it. So these subtle animation that when brought together in your interface, they can make a big difference. This particular thing, I could not find a code pen for it. This is one of the examples that I picked from Dribble. And you'll see a lot of the examples from Dribble over here also. So that's what this one does. Next is staging. So staging is just presentation of an idea that is clear. So just telling them exactly what's going to happen. So when they click on it, something blinks, something happens. Created this really quick MailChimp button. When you bring your mouse over, it just changes the colors. So you kind of know exactly what to expect out of it, and it just makes a really cool experience. People just want to see what's going to happen next. So building that anticipation for them and making them take that action towards it. The next one was straight ahead and pose to pose. So straight ahead and pose to pose are two different things. Straight ahead meaning taking a timeline and putting certain objects throughout the whole timeline and creating an animation that goes from one stage to the other to the other. And I have a really great example for this that was done purely in CSS. I can't wait to show that to you. Pose to pose in general is pretty much changing of a shape. So if something is a square and over time it changes into a circle, so that's a more of a pose to pose animation, and you can use these kind of transitions in something like this where the whole thing is done purely in CSS. You can see there is no JavaScript to it. It's purely CSS and HTML. But this whole animation where it's doing this, when you're at a different timestamp, it creates a different animation for you. As you bring your mouse over, it brings different animation and you know, I guess interactions to you as you interact with the piece. What this does is it also allows you to create mobile interactions without having to use heavy iOS or Android related application services if you don't know those. If some of you guys are students from the boot camp, you guys can start using these kind of services today without having to dive deeper into bigger I guess iOS related, you know, coding examples, if that's what you know, helps you understand and learn the code. Literally, this particular piece of code was one of my favorites. It's by David Khorshid, I think that's his last name. But what I did was, because I was traveling a lot, I couldn't create all these examples by myself. I was super excited to actually create all of them by myself. One, to make my own skill set grow bigger in learning how to do all these principles of animation, bringing them into a real-time UI. Apparently I had to travel a lot recently, so I couldn't do it, but I did manage to find some really cool examples for you guys. The next one is, give me a second. Oh. So next one is follow through. So follow through is pretty much an object moves and then everything else follows with it. So just how you see it in that I guess picture, you can see that in an onboarding process of a basic app that you can create. You can create these kind of interactions today using CSS just to, you know, build your UI again better. And I might be repeating myself like 15 times now, but idea is, you know, build applications that are really cool, really awesome, easy to use with CSS. And we'll go through when we talk about CSS transitions and we talk about CSS transforms and how they perform compared to JavaScript also. So that's that. Slow in and out. So slow in and slow out. So have you ever seen animations that go really fast, then they slow down, and then they, they start slowly, then they go really fast, and then they slow out. Mainly on Android applications, like if you are an Android user, you'll see the slider has a really nice ease in, ease out for them. A good example would be a dribble ball just bouncing up and down. Couldn't find anything better, but you can create a loading screen that really works really well like this. Next one would be arches. So the animation that follows any kind of circular pattern that you can create within your application. Something like bunny jumping. So you can create, you know, and it's purely done in CSS, which is another great thing. I think SVG and CSS, they put together to create this particular animation. But again, really cool animation, and you can create like a really great loading screen so that the user does not get frustrated. I think this could be a really good example of how Snapchat uses that little ghost thing when you refresh something, right? So rather than having that static loading page that people get frustrated with, if you create something like this that does not take more than, I don't know, 4K or maybe 2K of your CSS, and build something really cool, and it loads while, you know, everything else loads on a mobile device with a 4G network. The whole idea. Secondary actions. So secondary actions is something that you already did something and something else is about to follow. So you take one action and the supplementary action that follows along is what that is. So a great example, and I think I have 2 examples for this. So this interface was done really well, but this one also uses a lot of JavaScript. So I wanted to also show you guys pure CSS based animation, but this one has this, which kind of anticipates the secondary action. When you click on it, it rolls down like that. So all done in, what's up? Oh, I'll load it again. So when I click on it, the whole thing rolls down. Oh, sorry, my bad. I'm clicking on my screen over here. Sorry. All right. Okay. So there we are. And so it rolls down. And then when you click on request, it rolls down again to show more information to you. So this one had some JavaScript in it, so I definitely wanted to show you guys something that was done purely in CSS. So here's another example. If I can bring my mouse over here. Okay, so in this one, when you bring your mouse over, so a secondary action that follows when you click on the first one. Idea is to have interfaces that are single goal-oriented interfaces. Think of it this way. Apple iPhones, they always have that one button. They have one mouse. Human brain is not designed to do multiple interactions. Although we always think that we can do 10 things at a time, if we focus on one thing, we are far more better doing that one thing than doing 10 different things. So idea is creating interfaces that have single action to them, but that follows with multiple interactions that you're creating along with it. So this one could be a great example where you bring your mouse over and it kind of rolls into numerous actions that you can take. Again, this one was purely all CSS, so I just wanted to create one example that kind of takes care of that piece. The next one is timing. So for timing, I could not find a real actionable thing unless you use heavy JavaScript of some sort. But pretty much timing is one of the complicated pieces of animation that you can't really use much unless you're using Flash, of course. But idea is creating animations. The whole idea behind timing in animation is the more instances you use, the smoother your animation becomes, and the lesser instances of the image that you use, the crispier, the sharper your animation is. So showing that difference to you guys was something out of my range to find in a short period of time that I had. But idea behind this one is creating timely animations that interact. I think only way you can create this kind of interaction is if you're using Adobe After Effects to create something, and it doesn't relate to web or CSS. So I just left it as is and just showed you guys an example. The next one is exaggeration. So this is pretty much like showing something that's presenting reality in a wide or like extreme form. So like exaggerating like big time. As you can see, like the thing is just biting onto it. So here's a really cool example of it. It's just like exaggerating, trying to get all the mix-ins into your CSS bucket that I could find. So that was a basic, but it was all done in CSS. So I thought it was pretty clever. And SVG, I would say, I guess. So the next one is solid drawings. So solid drawings is pretty much using three-dimensional objects into a two-dimensional space by using the volume and the weight of making it feel real. So there's no better example than Google's Material UI on how Google does it. Like when you bring your mouse over or when you swipe through something, things go into different layers, and it kind of really creates that depth in a flat screen. So that whole idea of creating this whole animation, again, this was all done in CSS also. So these are some of the really cool capabilities that CSS has. And I think I have one more, yeah, appeal. So appeal is pretty much, bringing that charm into, your experience. So for example, if somebody filled out a form on your website, you want to indicate that, hey, hooray, we got this done really well. I think MailChimp does this really cool high five thing after you send out the mail, and it just says high five. We just ship the mail out or something. But it's a really cool animation that MailChimp does. I think they're using full SVG animation for it. But those kind of interactions, one that I could find was this one, where you bring your mouse over, and it just kind of kind gesture and kind of tells you exactly what to expect out of it. So whole idea behind this, and you guys can hear me fine, right? Okay, cool. Whole idea behind this is creating animations that make your interface not only functional, but actually creates an experience behind it for your users. You can, create applications all day, but right when you add those little small changes into it, like interaction, it makes your application a lot more pleasing, no matter what platform you're using. So that kind of covers the principles of animation. The next thing going forward would be designing more in motion. So using motion to connect patterns in human brain. So by nature, we problem solve and connect patterns. Like, that's just the way it is. We look at something and we find a pattern and we try to solve that problem, or we connect with it. We all want to understand. So that's another thing, that we see something, we are visual people, we can't articulate everything that we saw, we cannot explain. And that's why a lot of people have these holy moments of like, oh, I just saw God, but they can't explain what God is or something, right? And I'm not a religious person by any means, I'm just giving that as an example. And then, motion can help connect people, all these patterns that you have. So any kind of motion that you use in your interaction, or however you do it, whether it's a mouse over or whether it's a tap, whatever you are doing, if you create some kind of animation, some kind of ripple effect around it, it kind of interacts people with what they're doing and how they're doing it, right? And so pretty much when you are using the motion, there are certain things that you want to keep an eye on. So you don't want to flood your whole experience with crap ton of animations here and there everywhere. Like, one of the worst things that I hate is those pop-ups that appear right when you enter like some blog website, and they just like appear with a really annoying animation, because it's not even cool at this point, because you just annoyed me immediately when I got on your website. I don't want to subscribe to your thing. I just want to read what you have, and if I like it, then maybe I'll take in consideration if I want to subscribe to your blog or not. But within the first 30 seconds, they just have a little pop-up. So use motion sparingly. Like, it could also work at disadvantage to what you are doing. Sometimes people who have vision problems, if you use too much animation, it could actually work to your disadvantage. So use it very sparingly. Test it, obviously. Use motion to help promote content. So don't do animation all across the page. So don't do firecrackers and you have a static message that says free shoes, right? Don't do that. Promote the content. Use animation to promote the content. So if you're doing animation, bring this animation up that says free shoes. So bring that to more focus, bring that to more attention. And benefits over features. So David Ogilvy once said, and David Ogilvy, if most of you who don't know, he was one of the biggest or best marketer ever to live in US. He brought companies like Rolls-Royce, Shell, and all these other great marketing campaigns to US when they first came to US. And he had some really good principles on marketing, and his idea still lasted all this year. People at Apple, people at all these big marketing agencies out in New York, they still follow those principles of David Ogilvy. But one of the things that David Ogilvy said was, tell the truth, but make the truth fascinating. And if you ever go to Apple's website to check out any of their product, they take the biggest detail of the smallest thing, they take a closest shot of that thing. They make this truth sound fascinating, right? And you can do that with animation also. So creating that experience of, bringing those little subtle moments, subtle animations without overbearingly using it all over the web page. It could really work towards your advantage. Keep user focus on content experience. Not other shiny objects is the whole idea, but you can definitely make a big difference with this. So there is a saying, there was a saying on a shaker that said, don't make something unless it is both necessary and useful, but if it is both necessary and useful, don't hesitate to make it delightful. So idea is, if you know that you can functionally create something and you can make it look beautiful, don't hesitate to use both of those to create some final product. Following up with Brad Westfall and Jonathan Snook about Bootstrap, right? So the reason why it's easy to make something in Bootstrap, in 15 minutes, you have 15 minutes to build something, you can build something in Bootstrap, but that 15 minutes does not buy you that experience of how cool it is and how awesome you can make it. You cannot make something delightful in 15 minutes. Spend some time on it and make sure that you build that experience alongside with, creating your applications also. And if you guys have noticed, if you guys haven't noticed, most applications that are not only simple but are intuitive to use are the ones that trump any applications that were old school and they were hard to use. Any example that you take, MailChimp, that's how they came up, right? Like there were many email application services out there, and I don't know why I keep bringing up MailChimp as if I can't even think of anything else right now. But yeah, there are many applications and many services that are out there that are very delightful to use. I think Mimi or Mini, I can't remember, it was MadMimi. It was like an email service, which is another cool service that makes it really delightful experience when you're using the application. We did use a lot of these things in our personal application, the Convert application that I built. My business partner, he has this restless leg syndrome, and it annoys the crap out of me because I'm working and it's just like something shaking. I can't really tell him to stop. So I created in our application, if our application goes idle for more than a minute and a half, literally a rabbit shows up and it says, stop shaking your leg, Kevin, because it's literally a direct joke to him, but it even engages users, be like, who's Kevin? And then they know that the founder of, he has a restless leg syndrome and you have a cool story to tell. But you don't experience that often, but when they do experience it, it's like, oh, I get the joke now. It's the whole thing. But idea is to creating, when it's frustrating for users, use these kind of animations, use this kind of interaction to make that frustration go away and make the software feel frustrated rather than the user feeling frustrated about it. That's the whole idea behind it. So the next, thing is going into a little bit of code. I'm not going to do live coding. I wanted to do live coding, but I'd stay away from it for now. But what we are going to do is we're going to talk about CSS Transitions, and we're going to talk about how to use it and what the performance capabilities it has. So, the two main properties that are required for transition are transition property and transition duration. The other two, that's transition delay and the time function, they are optional. I don't think you really need them, but if you want to use them, you're more than welcome to use it. So if we were to break it down, I forgot to animate this to make it appear one after the other. Never mind. But you can create, transition property where you can create something like transform. you can create opacity for it. I think that was just an example. But you can create a duration for like 1 second and then ease. And I think I have an example for this also. Or we can just quickly open this up in CodePen and put this in and make it work. But you can make a button with full detail that explains the full property of it, or you can just use a shorthand function where you can just tell it to transform at 1 second and create like a timing function and then create a 2-second delay so it animates after the 2 seconds have appeared. The timing function is, since transitions and animations must have a beginning and end, cubic Bezier will give you like the best unique motion. Cubic Bezier, so I've added some links at the bottom. These are some really helpful links. I do urge you to check them out, but this particular link over here allows you to create your smooth animations and really play around with how you want to create your animation. Where's the button? Oh yeah. So as I'm dragging, is it not working? Must be broken. Where is it?
Next to compare.
Oh, this one?
Next to the compare.
Oh, this one? Oh, there. Okay. So you can see the difference between the two animations on how it's working. If I create the duration slower in the beginning, and then so this blue one handles the blue cube that we have pretty much between the time and distance. You can create how fast you want what to go, and you can create some really cool interaction just to test out how you want to create your animation. So if you're moving two objects, sometimes you're doing parallax kind of interaction for your users. You can come over here, check out some really cool properties. It also creates this whole exact sequence for you, how you want it for your pages. Then the other one, if you are interested in learning a little bit more, the link for it is this Caesar's CSS easing automation. So it does the same thing. You can do something like this and then do that. So it kind of tells you can work with the height, the width, everything, all the different properties that you have capabilities. Now it disappeared. But you have opportunity to play around with these links and really understand what it means to create really cool animation. This particular link, so when I was first getting into animation or creating some sort of animation, so I would see like some really cool interactions and I'm ask myself, why can't I do this? This particular link, it's called easing something. I can't read it from here, easing.net. But this kind of helped me understand like how I want to create animations. Then I had to read some other books also, and I think I have reference to those books in my talk. But this really helped me kind of understand what this whole ease in, ease out means and why is it important and what kind of durations I should be using when I'm creating my interactions for the app that I'm creating. But yeah, these links, definitely check them out. They're really cool links, really cool resources for you if you're starting out or if you just want to check out a little bit animation for whatever you're doing. Take one at a time, like take one button and just make it look better, and then make it something else better. So here's a little pro tip for you guys. So give browser a heads up by listing CSS properties that will more likely be changing. So as you're changing, you can always do a will change property. I don't know if many of you know what a will change property is, but it allows you to let the browser know beforehand that you will be interacting with this particular piece. And then no more, translate 0 or translate 3D kind of hacks. Please don't do that. It's just not good. And then everything you need to know about the will change property, there is a link underneath it. So if you click on that, it'll take you to this. Sarah wrote this. She's, by the way, all her stuff is really awesome. I don't know if you guys ever had a chance to check out her stuff on Tempest, Code Drops. Is it Code Drops, right? Yeah. But yeah, she gives you the full, the whole GPU acceleration and everything that you need to know about, will change property. I didn't even know about this until I read deeper into one of the CSS Tricks blog, and then I was like, oh wow, this is pretty cool. I can try this. But anyways, but performance. So you'll want to stick to transitioning, transform, and opacity as much as possible. Otherwise, the more interactions you create, the more memory gets used. Not memory, but the more GPU, the processing of your client's computer, and sometimes they're not powerful. So you always want to keep that in mind when you create these sort of interactions. Altering anything else is costly at a large scale. So especially imagine this, you are working at Infusionsoft or you're working at PayPal, and you really wanted to create this really cool interaction, but over time that interaction builds up so much processing that every time the page is open in the browser, the fan of the computer keeps going faster and faster. So idea is stay with transform and opacity. It doesn't use up that much memory. Use everything else. Use JavaScript or other advanced functions that you have. Next thing, oops, where am I going? Next is, wait, where we go next? There, CSS Transforms. So we'll talk about the usage and performance. So transforms can seem complicated at first. So start with just doing the translate, rotate, scale kind of thing. So pretty much transform allows you to pretty much change anything, whether it's an image, text block, you name it, block of whatever it is. Like if you want to bring something to more attention and you want to zoom in, scale in, transform is the property for CSS that you want to use. So I created like a really quick one. Literally, I was making it right before this talk. But this little property up there where I just rotated the whole thing sideways, and here's a little code for it. But all I did was I translated it to negative 30 pixels and then rotated it 30 degrees and then scaled it to 0.8 so does that and oh yeah, there. And transform has a lot more features. So you can do translate. You can translate X, so you can change the property of the X. You can change the property of Y. You can scale it, same. You can rotate everything. And then if I go down this list, give me just a second. Oh, there's even more properties. So you can use matrix. I had never used matrix. If anybody over here used matrix 3D for any kind of transition, let me know. I'd like to check out what you've done with it. Perspective, so you can create perspective. So especially when you're using something like SVG related or like the WebGL kind of things, I think some of those properties could become helpful. But I just stick to the basic, opacity, transform, translate kind of properties, especially for UI interaction. I don't think you need more than that. If you're creating some kind of cool animation like how CSS Trick has done with their logo thing, I don't know if you guys have checked it out, but every time you bring your mouse over that logo, it does this really cool SVG animation. We can go to it right now and check it out. But their logo, what? Oh, there. So it does that cool stuff. So And so, yeah, it's a really cool, and it's all SVG and animation, and only people who visit this website often, they know about this kind of tricks that they add on. There are a few other websites that did these tricks, but right now I can't think much. But anyway, so you guys can definitely, you know, test out some of those. You can do transform origin. So it's just like animating the anchor point in After Effects. So literally think about, wish I had these links available to me right now, but imagine you click over here and this thing drops down, right? Like from a specific angle. So you can find the origin point of where you want to animate something out of it. So you can create some really, really cool interactions with these, make it more human, or like human interactive interfaces. You can really create something like that with this transform origin, rotating and all that stuff. It's really cool stuff. Am I on the page? Okay, cool. Yeah. All right. So couple of things to set up for 3D. So if you are interested in doing some kind of 3D rotation of sort, like I don't know when you would use it, but if you do use it, here are some good examples. You can do perspective, you can do transform, and again, these are the properties that CSS3 allows you to do. I personally never used it myself, but here's a quick example that I created. So I guess I didn't animate it, but you know, whoa, cool 3D kind of thing. So this kind of just, you know, brings it to that perspective. Never really looks good or great on your page, but in case something comes across that will look good when you make it rotate like this. But it was a quick example just to show a demonstration. So in terms of performance, anything within transforms are a fair game. So you can do translate, rotate, anything that you do, it does not really affect the GPU all that much, because all you're doing is moving things around inside the browser. It's so it doesn't really affect your browser's memory or processing speed all that much when you're using it even in heavier applications. Really cool animations that I've seen recently is like you have a menu, you click on it and that thing rotates into like a close button or something and shows up the whole menu. But that whole small rotation right there is a CSS animation that not many people I guess use, but the more you use it, the more you realize how cool it is. Wish I could find that animation right now and show it to you guys, but it'll be hard to find. And it's just a matter of the browser support for the transform property. So that's one other thing. Not many browsers support the 2D and 3D changes for transform properties. I have the links over here, and I'll make these link visible. I'll probably add a white color to it. But these are the can I use links for transforms for 2D and 3D. You know, so you can literally, and I think most of the properties that you do want to use, they are supported by the browsers unless you're using Opera Mini. I don't know why you would use that, but I guess for testing you can. But for Chrome, Internet Explorer, and again, with the new change in the new Internet Explorer that's coming out, I think a lot of these properties will be available across all the devices. So moving on, I guess. So there, CSS animation. So animation's the coolest part in CSS. So you can animate with two properties mainly, the animation name and then the duration. So pretty much the way you do this is you give it a name, a keyframe, and then you create an animation. So you can use something that starts at 0%, 50%, and 100%. So at each of those durations, so this would be a good example of the timing thing that I couldn't find. But at this percent, do this kind of animation. At this percent, do this kind of animation. Or a better way of doing it is just do from to to. That's usually how I use it, is just from this starting point, move this object to this, and then, to this, move that over there, kind of, I guess. To you can change everything, add like, go granular, or you can just write everything in one line. So here's a quick example. You can do animation name, duration, delay, interaction time, or interaction count, and then timing function. You can do the direction, so it works on the y-axis and x-axis. You can do fill mode, so you can literally do the fill property for it, and then play state. So while it's paused, while it's running, how you want to interact a specific interaction. Recently I created a React app for a local startup, and their whole idea was to send you a text message while you're waiting at a restaurant to get served. And while you're waiting, you get a text message, you click on a link, and it's a really cool interaction. And it was done in React and all that, but that's when I really used, a lot of these animation features. So while you're waiting, what kind of animation appears on the bell or like any kind of notification. But these keyframe animations are one of the best, I guess, interaction pieces that I've made use of to create some really cool interactive pieces in my application. And I would urge you guys to really look into these properties if you haven't already done so for animation. In terms of performance, animating is just just stick with the transform and the opacity, so like changing the colors, or going from 0 to full visibility of some object as you bring your mouse over. Try to keep your animation keyframes as low interactions as possible, only when needed kind of thing. If you overwhelm your browser with a lot of these, it could be costly to on your browser or on your user's browser, I must say. So anything and animating layout and properties create a lot of paint and a lot of composite issues. So that's what I was kind of trying to get at, is try to not use this as much, but when you use it, you can create some really cool interactions with it. Then here are some really cool links, especially CSS Triggers. Where's my mouse? All right. So this one gives you a list of properties for how you can use any of these triggers. And then this other link is pretty much the can I use link for CSS animation on what browsers it's supported. Again, Opera Mini is the only one that's left out. Feel sorry for it, but that's their story. Pro tip, so just how you can use negative margins. You can also use negative delays in your animation to start further into the animation. So you can start something in the negative and then move it into the positive as you're creating that interaction. So, and then again, changing the z-index between the keyframe to stimulate layer switching. So if it's like moving between the two layers and stuff, that's how most parallax animations are done. Pretty much switching the z-indexes. If you're switching between it, it just creates this illusion of things are moving between each other, but they're not really. It's just changing. I guess they are, but yeah. So try working with those tips and see if some of that comes handy. I had a resource page. Where did it go? I may have what? This is bad. I'll add a resource page to it, but I had really cool links. This one link that I admired, like I subscribed to this one, is called uimovements.com, I think. Yep, this one. So this one, I've subscribed to it. I get like 5 interactions every day in my inbox. I would urge you guys to subscribe to it if you guys are front-end developers. Really cool interactions, really cool UI ideas. See, this is really cool in a way. It's not all that, it's got too much glitter, but like that whole initial animation was good. But it has ideas on creating some really cool interactions. If you are free on the weekend and want to test around with it, you know, feel free to check out this site. There were a few other sites, I think. So I was working on 2 different laptops, and I was explaining the story to somebody over here. But as I was making changes on one, because this whole slide is online, I must have lost all my changes on the other slides. But I had all these cool links for you guys to check out. But a lot of these, also check out Dribble. That's what I do a lot. There is another website. Then there were 2 books. There is one that's The Illusion of Time or Animation. That's a really great book, and I'll find those links and I'll add them to this link. The slide is, URL to it is very straightforward. It's for my presentation at least. Give me, oops. It's this right here. And if you could just message me on Twitter, I'll post this link out with a short URL. Again, apologize for having a bad slide deck, missing a bunch of stuff in here, but that was mainly because working between 2 computers was not a good idea. That was bad on my part. But yeah. So that's that, and thank you. If you have any questions.